Good morning to everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you so much for joining our webinar presentation today, hosted by the Incarnate Word Foundation. I'm going to get us started with a couple of logistics and then turn it over to our next speaker. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Hillary Fry, and I'm the Executive Director of STL Youth Jobs. Before we get started, I do want to say a real quick thank you to my staff. We are not a technology-based company, but we have figured out over the course of the last several days and weeks how to integrate our own team meetings, as well as conduct a webinar with nearly 100 attendees this morning, and I had very, very little to do with that. So I want to make sure to point out my staff, Camille Hogan, Sarah Breed, Lindsay Forsyth, and Jerica Robinson, who've all contributed significantly to the presentation that you're seeing this morning and the work that we're conducting moving forward. I have the greatest team of women on the planet, and I'm very thankful, especially during these times, to be able to have such a great group of people to work with. So applause and thanks to them. So with that, I just want to say a couple of quick programming notes for this morning. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll send a link out to all registered participants after the fact. Feel free to share that with others within your teams that may be interested. We're also going to be accepting questions in the Q&A box. You'll see at the bottom of the screen that there's a Q&A box as well as a chat box. Sarah from my team is going to be fielding those, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end of the hour for the panelists to all rejoin to address the Q&A specifically. So feel free to ask those questions throughout the course of the morning. And then anything that we don't get to, we will respond directly, and we'll, depending upon how many questions we have and how much of it can be conducted during the course of this presentation, we can also send those out with the link to the webinar as well. So with that, I did want to point out our group of panelists this morning and then kick it off to our opener. So on this panel this morning, we have Bridget Flood, who is the Executive Director of the Incarnate Word Foundation, Patrick Brown with Ameren, Missouri, Sheila Burkett with Spry Digital, and myself. So first of all, to get us started with a welcome and introduction, I am going to turn it over to our host. Bridget approached me a few weeks ago and said, how can I help? What can I do to be supportive of the organization, and suggested that this might be a good format for us to provide what our response is and what our plans are for the summer. So just want to thank Bridget and Mike Fitzgerald with the Incarnate Word Foundation for all of their support throughout the years, but also for being so quickly responsive to us in the wake of all of these changing times and environments. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bridget for the welcome and introductions.
Okay, thank you very much, Hillary. I'm very glad to be with all of you this morning with STL Youth Jobs, and I'm not supposed to have favorite projects, but if I did, this would be one of my favorite projects. We started back in 2012 when a group of funders, individuals and businesses and civic leaders came together to begin STL Youth Jobs. We've served over 4,000 youth. The project started when the Incarnate Word Foundation worked with Mayor Slay and MERS Goodwill to put together the concept, and this is where Mike Fitzgerald was really key, and Hillary Wagner over at MERS, to get things organized so that we could have a summer jobs program. The St. Louis Community Foundation became our fiscal agent. We started in just 6 neighborhoods, and we employed nearly 200 youth in our first full year. The prior year, we had a pre-pilot where we had about 63 youth. But since then, we've expanded so that now there are 45 neighborhoods and municipalities, both in the city and county, that provide job opportunities to more than 4,000 youth in the 7 years we've been around. The mission of STL Youth Jobs, and most of you would be familiar with this, is to bridge the divide between our region's youth and the growing skills gap in our workforce by providing youth with a paid work experience, mentoring, career counseling, and case management from a job coach. There's also financial empowerment training and access to youth-friendly bank accounts, as well as vital job readiness and essential skills training. I mean, I've personally seen how STL Youth Jobs has impacted young people in our community. I think about Emmanuel Hayes, and Emmanuel Hayes received an award from President Obama as one of our youth ambassadors. He started off as a student. He was in high school at the Carnahan High School down in South St. Louis, and got his first job at the Jones Funeral Home up in North St. Louis. He since then has gone to the community college and is working in the funeral industry now. So it's a wonderful success story, and Emmanuel and his family were just, I mean, I'm so glad I've gotten to meet them and know them through this program. Amazing, they're amazing people. I think the most important thing I have to say to you all today, though, is that STL Youth Jobs is a key component in our community. And while I know that things are kind of at sixes and sevens with this COVID crisis, it's more important than ever that we focus on our young people, giving them opportunities to connect to the mainstream economy, opportunities to realize their dreams and their full potential. We can't afford to lose our young people, even though we're dealing with this healthcare crisis at the moment. So I'm hoping that everybody steps up to the plate. I know the Incarnate Word Foundation is, and we're looking forward to welcoming young people this summer in jobs and meaningful employment. Now I'd like to introduce Patrick Brown, who's the Community Development Executive for Ameren, Missouri. As a former member of both Lyda Crewson's and Mayor Slay's administration, Patrick's seen the evolution of STL Youth Jobs and recently became a member of its board of directors. I'm really happy he's part of our grant review committee. I've loved getting to know Patrick, and please join me in welcoming him. Patrick? Patrick?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thanks, Bridget. And thanks everybody for joining us here. It's been a pleasure to serve on the Youth Jobs Board. And as Bridget mentioned, was able to participate from afar as a member of the mayor's office. And since leaving, have had the opportunity to join the board. And so one of the things that really stood out to me as a board member and just a general member of the St. Louis community is the racial equity sort of impact that COVID-19 is going to continue to have and is currently having on our community. And one of the interesting things about STL Youth Jobs is actually the way in which we're positioned to really counteract that in a number of ways. And so as our community begins to grapple with what it means to get back to some semblance of normalhood or normalcy, and we start evaluating the physical and both economic impacts and paths forward. We also have to recognize that the negative impacts of this are also being most acutely felt by minorities in St. Louis and people of color all across the region, and particularly for our youth. And our youth already experience some of the highest rates of unemployment. They have less equitable opportunities for training, education, and there's a general sense of disconnectedness from our region and the regional economy specifically. And then on top of that, I guess our communities of color are also disproportionately feeling the direct impacts of COVID-19, whether that be infections or deaths. And all of that just goes to further compound these pre-existing scenarios and racial disparities. So, you know, as people begin conserving their economic spending and going forward, our youth are also going to be the most expendable members of the economy and continue to struggle to meet basic needs. So, you know, with widespread unemployment in the wake of a recession, now more than ever, we need to intentionally focus our resources and our attentions to ensuring that our youth have summer employment opportunities as a way to both help families to grow themselves and their skills, but it's also a really unique opportunity to stimulate the local economy by providing temporary capacity to businesses and organizations in our region, predominantly small businesses that are going to struggle to open their own doors and get their businesses back on track. So as I mentioned, the COVID-19 deaths have disproportionately been concentrated in minority communities. And there are a couple stats here that I'd like to point out. So for example, in St. Louis County, 55% of all the positive COVID-19 cases were Black individuals. However, 25% only 25% of the county's population is African American. And you compare this density represented in the purple and plum shaded areas on the left map with that of neighborhoods of STL Youth Job targets on the right, there's a clear correlation and opportunity for us to intervene and provide much needed financial and employment opportunities. So I think in closing, by working closely with our local philanthropic core, civic community, and our community leaders, we know that Youth Jobs is in a unique position given the population, the community that we serve, and that we have the sustaining power to aid in this regional economic recovery by doing what we've been doing since we started 7 years ago. And that's by providing the skills, training, and access to opportunities in tandem with mentorship to youth across a region that have been hardest hit. And we're going to be able to be that critical bridge in a divided region between the displaced youth and our business community. So I think that kind of concludes my remarks, and I would like to turn it back over to Hillary.
Thanks, Patrick. And also Bridget, I appreciate the both of you supporting us through this presentation today and through these responsive changes that we're making to continue to provide opportunity and operate our organization as well. So as Bridget and Patrick mentioned, over the past several weeks, we've been in discussion conversation as an internal team with our board of directors, with our donors, and with others around the country and locally about how we are preparing a response to the environmental and global changes that are happening as a result of this pandemic that we're living in, and the changes that we need to make in order to continue to provide these opportunities. When we were first grappling with these decisions, and when we were discussing this with our board of directors, I would like to applaud them and thank them for their flexibility and understanding, knowing that this is critical work that needs to continue even despite environmental changes that are happening locally, globally, et cetera. And they have been incredibly supportive of shifting budgets, shifting program designs, and working with us to ensure that we are able to continue to provide these critical services. So I would also like to thank our board of directors for that continued support as well too. And I know there's a number of them that are joining us on the call today. So with that, I wanted to provide you with a little guidance into some of the scenarios that we're preparing for the summer, knowing that what our traditional experience, it will look very different in some respects than it has in the past. But I do want to stress that the core of the work that we do, which is providing access to a work opportunity through a model of training and mentorship, will not change as a result of the changes that we're experiencing. We're just working to conduct those things in a different way. So as I mentioned, over the past several weeks, we've been in a lot of conversations with folks here locally that are operating nonprofits that focus on youth development. We've been looking at online training platforms and providers, talking with our case management software development system, as well as talking to a dozen or so other summer youth employment programs around the country to come up with some strategies that make sense for us here in St. Louis and can draw on some of those scenarios that are being created around the country as well too. So I did want to provide these scenarios to you that we will talk through, and I'll get into a little bit more just about the specifics of what this could look like from an individual work experience. But in order for us to continue to provide services in a way that's conducive to the indefinite extension of stay-at-home orders and the changes that we may see in the next several weeks, months, and the guidance that we're receiving from local authorities, we wanted to allow some flexibility if those orders do lift at some point during the summer months and a more traditional work experience becomes a reality. So this is broken up into three categories: blended, remote, and traditional. The blended model, first of all, would be if stay-at-home orders are lifted and we do have the ability to have some in-person interaction during the course of the summer. So this could look like the majority of the work, possibly 60% of it or so, is conducted from an online or at-home perspective. 40% of that could be in person, where youth are rotating in person in small cohorts on different days in an office setting, and or they're also having one-to-one interactions with their supervisors as well as the job coaches that are connected to them. I will get into the case management function of this work too in a bit, because that is going to be even more critical this summer than ever. 100% remote is also a scenario that we're preparing at this point, where the internship and training is completely conducted from a remote perspective, either at home or online or both, through a variety of trainings, workshops, simulated workplace projects, and supervision from a job coach, as well as local businesses that we will be working with. The traditional approach and option is if shelter-in-place orders are lifted and we do have the ability and the safety in place to where youth can actually be placed in a summer work experience in a traditional way that we've done in the past, which includes any of the variety of employment opportunities that we've had in the past. Creating these alternative routes to employment includes a lot of shift to the standard criteria that we've set for a summer work experience. We will be working and are working currently with our employer partners to create programming and training that can be successfully executed from this remote setting. So I did want to get into a couple of specific examples that we've been coming up with. Lindsay Forsyth, who is our Director of Employer Relations and handles all of the employer applications as well as the conversations with those businesses who have indicated and interest in working with us this summer is in the midst of all these conversations now. If she hasn't spoken to you as a potential employer yet, she certainly will as we're rolling out these plans and have more information about the ways that we're going to be supportive of youth, but also supportive of our employer partners as well too. So I want to also stress that in each of these scenarios, there's going to be a remote component to the work, whether it is that you're doing all of your training and onboarding online as a youth, and then being placed in a blended opportunity, or potentially also that you're going to be conducting your work in a completely remote setting. One of the things that we have been working on is coming up with a variety of tasks and activities that can be done that aren't necessarily just sitting in front of a computer all day, because I think I would think the majority of us are kind of getting a little bit tired of that ourselves. And so we know that young people are also a little bit burned out on remote learning at this point. So we're trying to come up with strategies and examples, and we'll be working with employer partners as well, that can be done from a remote setting or a small group state setting as well, but that can be done without a computer necessarily. So examples here include a city beautification program that delivers planning and tools needed for block beautification, a STEM project that tests water and air quality, or a community service program where participants are packaging essential goods like food and hygiene products for local food pantries and nonprofits, or creating artwork for community centers and elderly care centers and things like that. Online tasks are going to be a huge part of this, obviously, because we are going to need to conduct a lot of our case management and our training and some of the work experience from that setting. So online tasks and activities for a lot of you, because you're working from a remote setting yourselves, these are a little bit more straightforward and are probably some of the functions that some of your businesses are also conducting, which includes things like youth working on an electronic filing system of healthcare records, responding to general health inquiries through a call center approach, developing fitness and nutrition recommendations for seniors or diabetics or COVID survivors, managing online orders and other customer service needs for local business, or producing a weekly company newsletter and social media content. Third, I also want to talk a little bit about our training programs, because we have made a decision as an organization to completely integrate all of our training programs from a virtual setting this summer, which is not the way that we have conducted this part of our services in the past. All trainings that youth go through prior to starting a work experience have always all been done through a small group setting with members of our staff and training facilitators. So we have, in addition to the conversations that we're having with others around locally and around the country, have been researching online training platforms and case management platforms that will allow us to conduct this part of our work from a virtual setting. So we've researched a ton of different training platforms that will benefit. They range from soft skills training, financial literacy, career exploration, as well as digital literacy. And I just wanted to point out one example is a platform called Hats and Ladders, which is designed to motivate youth to explore, experiment with, and prepare for a wide range of career pathways. Youth in this platform can learn basic information about potential career pathways, and they can essentially try on a career by completing hands-on activities within certain modules, engaging in some real-world experiences, and informal and formal workplace skill building. They can also learn additional information about salaries and local and national job prospects. I am not the most tech savvy, as I've already mentioned on this call, but I found it an incredibly easy way to navigate through, and some of our staff also asked some of their children to test out some of the material which has come back with very positive reviews. So we're really excited to be integrating that platform into our work as well too. Additionally, I also wanted to point out, as some of you know, we launched a pilot last summer with the St. Louis internship program called the Career Accelerator Program, which is a more competitive process for a small group of our alumni to participate in. They have to be over 18, and they qualify by submitting a resume, having at least a 2.5 GPA, interviewing with us prior to the work experience. They make more money through the course of the summer and get a lot more professional development-based training. So we have also been grappling with making modifications and changes to that specific program, knowing that it was incredibly successful last year, and we wanted to continue it forward in an intentional way. So this summer, approximately 50 participants that qualify for the Career Accelerator Program are going to be divided into specific cohorts based on their interests and skills. They'll rotate through 4 different internship sites. They'll receive 4 weeks of work experience, and youth will change business locations week to week for a total of 4 internship sites throughout the summer. They'll receive a project at the beginning of each week and will be required to have regular check-ins with their supervisor as well as their case manager that is provided by the St. Louis Internship Program, our program partner in that respect. And this plan also includes the option of approaching this from a completely remote perspective or the blended approach that I also mentioned just in terms of the stay-at-home order scenario at that given time. These are just a few examples, and we'll be conducting these discussions with our employers to determine additional projects and learning opportunities and workplace activities that we can incorporate it into our summer experience. I hope that us laying these plans out has also gotten some of you thinking about potential activities and partnerships that we can have with your businesses and your communities that would make sense for some engagement opportunities for these youth in the summer. Some of you may be thinking about some of the challenges that we're seeing that are coming to mind, and these are also things that we have been working through and doing our best to respond to as well. So I did want to address those and talk a little bit about what we're preparing in that regard. So first of all, we've done extensive surveying of youth that have applied to our program, as well as employers that have applied, and have also been in conversation, again, with a number of other individuals that we have worked with in the past and are intending to work with this summer. And so this information I'm providing you is coming directly from those surveys from our communities, and then also what our plans are as well. So access to technology is obviously one of the biggest barriers and challenges for our organization. We're concerned about having reliable access to devices as well as internet or hotspots. We're working with local school districts to ensure that whatever technology those districts are being provided is something that can be accessed and operated through the course of the summer, because a lot of districts are providing one-to-one support or are providing opportunities for youth to sign up to receive devices or hotspots. And so we're trying to tap into some of those existing resources. We also historically have always provided client assistance to youth and have intended to expand that client assistance budget this year in the event that we do also need to directly provide internet access or support for a device for a youth to be able to participate in our program for the summer. If anyone has other ideas around some technology supports, we are working on that as well, and we'd love to talk with you if you have any suggestions in that regard. Youth engagement is also obviously something we've already discussed a bit on this call, and one of the things that when we started talking about this as a team is we set up some surveying that we sent out via text message and email to any youth that has applied to our program. And the results that you're seeing on the screen are directly from youth who responded to those surveys. So 55% said that they were open to a virtual or a physical work experience. 30% of youth prefer a virtual work experience, and 15% indicated that they would prefer a physical work site. We presented this as in a variety of ways to them, but the one that I wanted to point out specifically is this 98% youth are still interested in participating in any capacity with our program, and I want to point that out to provide some optimism to these very grim times and ways that we're having to respond to this, because youth want to work, they want to be engaged, they are motivated to have opportunities, and so we're doing our very best to provide that. To date, we have just a little over 1,000 applications, and that number grows every day. So we know that youth are accessing our application through a variety of methods currently, but we also know that they want to be engaged. So we're attempting to do our very best to do that. And third, I just wanted to mention access to employer opportunities. The activities and variety of worksite experiences that I mentioned before, a lot of companies are obviously grappling with whether or not they would have the ability to host a youth this summer given all of the challenging climate changes. And also some have shuttered their traditional internship programs, and so are not in a capacity to necessarily take on this work in the way that they've done so in the past. We also did survey all of our employer applicants, which is about 105 employers have applied to date to work with us this summer. And of the employers that we surveyed, we asked some questions about their willingness and appetite to conduct a virtual internship program. And over half of them that responded to the survey had indicated they could connect youth to remote work experiences this summer. And we're in the midst of those conversations. Some of the evolution of our plans that are being proposed to the group today, we're also keeping in mind that may make it easier for a employer to commit to a smaller amount of time with a bit more direct engagement and direction from our staff through our case management supports as well too. So with that, I think that's a really good segue for me to introduce our next speaker, which is Sheila Burkett, who is one of the founders and the CEO of Spry Digital. She has and continues to be one of our very best employer partners and has provided a lot of very creative, unique opportunities to the variety of youth that she has worked with in the past and her staff as well. So I naturally invited Sheila to talk with you a little bit about what Spry Digital is thinking for the summer in terms of the potential for a completely remote or a blended work experience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sheila.
Good morning. Good morning. I think we're trying to get my video to be able to turn on. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. And as most of you probably are, we are continuing to navigate through how to best support our clients and our employees through this challenging time. And as we've been thinking about our internship programs as a whole, specifically also with regards to the St. Louis Youth Jobs, we really want to stay committed and make this as easy as possible for the youth that we would bring in to work with our team. So over the past 4 years, we've really worked to develop what we would consider an advanced training program around the youth who come in. And so we really focus on extensive Google Suite training and teaching them not only the basics of how to use calendaring, but giving them experience of doing calendaring by having to schedule meetings, not only with our internal staff, but with clients. And so that combination of teaching them how to communicate with our clients, how to communicate clearly, how to do calendars, set up, while we think everybody knows how to do that, they really come in not knowing how to do that. So that's a great example where it doesn't matter where they are in that location, we can give that training and they can provide that support. We use tools such as Slack so that we have day-to-day communications with our team. And so just making sure they're all looped into that communication. We also do resume building and help them, mentor them in helping them build a resume. This helps improve their writing skills too. So what we find is they know how to write, but in writing in the business sense and how to take the skills that they've learned through their youth and being able to put that into a resume to take forward. So those are some things that we build into our training program. And whether it's remote or face-to-face or in our office, we feel like we can still do that. Some of our specific projects that we really are hoping to be able to get done this summer, one is to be able to build out our target list in our CRM. So this is a great way, whether they're in the office or we're working with them and mentoring them remotely, to support our staff of going through either tagging our contacts and being able to start to build the list so that we can do specific messaging to them. That teaches them some great marketing concepts, how to use specific tools that we use. The other is in our applicant tracking system, we need someone to go back through and tag applicants based on certain keywords so that we can find good applicants in the future. While that seems tedious, what it does is it really gives them an ability to be able to interpret data and to begin applying skills around understanding how to do things like reading for context and applying that in the business world. We also will use them to help us do research on target clients that we're reaching out to. So as we build our sales pipeline, we continue to do a lot of research. And so teaching them extensive tools on how to do that research, how to build out what we call our power play and help us support that sales channel. So those are just some ideas that we've been specifically working on to make sure that they accommodate a short internship if it's they come in with the advanced program like Hillary was talking about, or if it's they're with us for a longer period of time, we can work with all of those. I think overall though, what it really does is it gives my team an opportunity to work on their leadership skills and their ability to help train and mentor others. And so we look at St. Louis Youth Jobs as that opportunity to grow our team in their leadership and their mentoring skills and being able to be fulfilled through that. So it's a win-win for all of us. And I think the students build that network that they need with our team and can do that whether it's one-on-one, face-to-face, or in a remote environment. So I hope that gives you kind of a sense of what our plans are and why we are pretty committed to this. And we hope that you will get creative and find those people within your company who either would love that opportunity to work with a youth or would need that opportunity to build their skill set too. So Hillary, I hope that covers some of what we talked about.
That was perfect. That I hope others that are on the call that have either applied to be an employer partner of ours or are considering it. Those strategies are exactly in line with what we're trying to approach companies about. And Sheila is a great example of a company that does this for all of the reasons that make our program so strong, and has always provided opportunity to youth wherever they are. I'm thinking back over the last couple of years to the different work experiences that Spry Digital has provided to the different youth each summer. Everybody has always been coming from a different place of experience or background, and they've always been so great at meeting the youth truly where they are. And I have a lot of confidence that they'll continue to do that this summer as well, even despite some of these changes. So thank you, Sheila, for those strategies. I really appreciate you providing us with some really good examples of what this could look like within the context of this environment as well, too. So here's the point where I ask everyone for your help. I've talked to a variety of the individuals who are participating on the call. So some of this is a bit redundant, but it's worth mentioning anyway. We need resources. We need resources from companies that are versed in technology and software development and remote or virtual learning or work experiences. We need guidance and advice on conducting a work experience from these capacities. So if you represent a business or you have expertise in those regards, we are looking for access to that type of opportunity. I'll provide one example. I'm not sure if she's on the phone today, but Amy Tall, who is in human resources with Edward Jones, had a conversation with us last week regarding the changes that they're making to their internship program as a company, which includes a completely remote and virtual internship experience for college level students. She very graciously shared a number of training ideas and resources for integrating that into our ability, and would provide some guidance to youth who are going to be working in a remote setting, just some tips and tricks and strategies for them to make that as successful as possible. So if you have an idea that you think would be helpful, please reach out to us. We are looking forward to having as many conversations as we can to be completely prepared for the process this summer. I think it goes without saying in this environment, I think we're all personally feeling this with our spouses and our children and our friends and our coworkers, as well as in this environment for us as an organization. If you're a donor, if you're an employer, or if you're a stakeholder in any sense, we ask for your flexibility and understanding, knowing that financial commitments we're struggling in regards to having revenue to support as many youth as possible, just like any other nonprofit and many other private sector businesses as well. And if you've already made a financial commitment to STL Youth Jobs, we thank you, and we also ask for flexibility and conversation around how we can translate those resources in a way that makes sense for this response that we're providing within this framework for 2020 itself. We obviously also ask for your support. We still need financial investment, regardless of what the program delivery looks like. Youth will still be earning an income this summer, and one of the simplest ways to get real income in the hands of families is to increase our financial investment. So I do want to stress the need for that as well. And then also access to employers and opportunities. We need more Sheila Burkett's, more Spry Digital, who are willing to have a conversation with us about how we could fit into their business model this summer, or how they can be supportive in other ways as well too, which we're happy to also discuss that. In closing, and then I'll have time to take a few questions if there are any. I also just wanted to say, Bridget started us today out with reading you our mission. And I want to stress again that in no way, shape, or form has our mission changed. We provide reliable income, safety, equity, stress relief, community, and a path to a future for youth within our community. This pandemic solidifies that our region needs to remain committed and increase support so that youth from underserved communities that have been hit the hardest by this pandemic have opportunities to build skills, to gain job experience, and to get the critical support that they need in order to have a successful future. So I thank you for your interest. Just the fact that we have so many individuals from a variety of industries and sectors on this call also makes me incredibly optimistic for the way that we can conduct our summer and ensure that we're increasing persistence and motivation among the community that we serve. So with that, I think Sarah from my team is gonna filter in some questions that have been coming in.
Good morning. You've addressed some of these, but I will read them out and you can repeat answers if needed. Will all participants be provided hardware, software, and internet access necessary to work virtually, or will that be the responsibility of the employer partner?
So this is something that we're working through, and I did try to address it within the challenges section of the presentation. As I mentioned, we will provide hardware and software through our ability to provide client assistance to as many youth that we can as needed, but we're doing our best to try to access existing resources and channels, other organizations that are providing that, again, local school districts, as well as we've been applying for this with some of the resiliency grants that have been coming out from different donors in response to COVID-19. We have been applying for additional assistance for technology. In addition to that, I mean, we will also be discussing that with employers as well too, and those that can provide devices and access, we will greatly take that as well too. So.
Thank you. Do we have a financial literacy partner yet, and who are we working with?
Sure. So STL Youth Jobs historically has worked almost exclusively with First Financial Federal Credit Union, who provides bank accounts for youth in our program, and have also provided financial literacy and empowerment training related to those accounts, but also other financial management and development as well too. From an online perspective, this year we are using a resource called EverFi to deliver those financial literacy trainings to youth. We will continue to work with First Financial this summer in regards to account openings. They have also been able to increase their ability to open accounts online. Our goal continues to be that we get as many individuals banked through the course of our summer process as we can, and so we'll continue to work with the credit union. And one of our service providing partners also works with Enterprise Bank, and so those are some of the conversations that we're having with them as well in terms of how we get those accounts opened, and then all youth will be getting those training opportunities through EverFi from a consistent platform.
Will we be sharing the slides and a link to the webinar after this concludes?
Yes, happy to share everything.
I believe that's all. Let me just check the Q&A one more time. What does professional development training look like through remote training? How will you engage a more personal experience?
So I do think this is something I kind of glossed over, and I did want to mention from the personal expertise. So professional development training will look different than it has in the past. It will be conducted through a virtual platform. We are also discussing with our employer and corporate partners ways that we can integrate some one-off trainings with some of those companies that may be able to provide a 1 to 3 hour session related to some sort of professional development topic. So it could be something like, how you create, develop, and use a LinkedIn profile in order to build your professional network. It could be something more simple in regards to a resume development workshop, things like that, where we're bringing in other speakers from different sectors. Some of that and may also be focused on information about specific careers, specific industries and pathways and things like that. So we're working on developing that right now. The St. Louis Internship Program, who provides the professional development training for the accelerated program, has an extensive history in delivering this this training, and so we're working with them so that we can ensure that that's done through a virtual setting with as much engagement as possible. I think the thing I did want to stress is every youth in our program is connected to a job coach or a case manager through our partnering organizations. And that piece of the experience is going to be more important this year than ever, because in addition to their ability to interface and communicate with their employer, for those that will have a specific work experience, that case manager is going to be the conduit to their information and engagement. And so we are ensuring that those case managers have a lot of direction and guidance in terms of their communication, getting them up to speed with all these virtual changes that we're making as well, to ensure that they are comfortable using the products that we're asking the youth to use as well too. So I can't tell you the specific layout of the curriculum itself, but it will look different than it has in the past, but it will still be a really great training.
The last one is, will there be rules for in-person activities such as wearing protective equipment, masks, gloves, and or social distancing?
Yeah, so I think the answer to this is evolving, because we are not certain if youth will be able to participate at a physical work site. And so our internal discussions that we're having as a team is, being responsive to what local authorities are saying about protective equipment, but also what safety standards we need to have in place through our program partners to ensure that youth that will be working at a physical work site potentially are safe. They feel equipped to do their job, but to also do it in a way that keeps their health in mind as well. And so we're looking for guidance from the CDC, as well as our local authorities and our state departments of labor and economic development, in terms of the standards, policies, and procedures that they are going to be putting out as our state begins to reopen businesses. We're anticipating to see a lot more guidance in that regard, and we'll be following those accordingly. And so I think also wearing protective gear is a part of one of those requirements if you're going to be working at a physical work site, as well as guidance on social distancing too. And if others on the call have advice or guidance in that regard, that's definitely something that we would be interested in having a conversation around.
The final question is, will you consider having youth utilize a digital payroll time card system, or will we continue to use paper and need a signature?
So this is also a question that's evolving, because not to get too far into the weeds of it, but we are working, because our work experience and training experiences are changing. It also changes the way that we will collect hours and time that youth are working. So we are actually considering, and will more than likely be integrating, a stipend-based pay for youth, as opposed to paying them by the hour. And so that changes the need for a time card, and also potentially changes the way that employers interface with us, from the perspective of, some employers may have a youth working on their staff for a 2-week period for 40 hours, and so a time card may make sense in that scenario. But the decision around digital versus a time card is something that will be done through our service providing agencies who are serving as the employer of record, we will take guidance from those providers on what they can reasonably do within the time frame of the summer job. So I think that's all the questions that we had. I will say again, please reach out if you have other questions, or if you would like to set up a time to talk about how you or your business or your agency can be supportive of STL Youth Jobs this summer. I want to stress again the importance of the work, and I'm happy to see that that there's so many individuals that care about it and want to see it succeed and move forward. And I want to thank the panelists as well for joining us today, for providing us with additional context and strategy as we navigate through this process. And again, I want to thank my staff as well as our board of directors for the support provided and the guidance and just the passion for the work. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close up. It is 10:59, 1 minute in advance, and say thank you to everyone. And I hope you have a great day and a great rest of the week.